I'm joined by Democratic strategist and former New York State Senator David Carlucci and founder and president of 917 Strategies, Sarah Selip. So, David, you got the pushback right now on that kind of rhetoric. I mean, look, you can disagree with a policy, but to basically say, you can kidnap or shoot an ICE agent, I mean, that's pretty stupid.
Yeah, well, that's not what he was saying.
That's exactly what he was saying.
I was watching your report just before, and it's about we don't know what's going on. And that's the issue. When you have masked agents approaching you, not identifying themselves, it's a very scary environment. And I can sympathize with the congressman. Maybe he wasn't as articulate as you would have liked. But what he's saying is what most Americans are thinking. How would I react if a masked agent came and approached me? That's a scary situation. I think that's one we all recognize needs to be reformed. And you'll have more and more problems unless we do that. They should be following the same rules that our local law enforcement follow here in New York, that federal law enforcement follows. These are common sense reforms that need to be made, or else what the congressman is saying, it puts our agents' lives in danger. And that's what we don't want to see.
A masked agent with a badge and a jacket that says
maybe
ICE.
A badge. We don't even know that. We don't know that. What we've been seing is just absolute chaos.
No,
I'm not there.
We've been seeing the chaos.
I'm seeing some videos.
Yes, we have been seeing chaos. It's been isolated to Minneapolis for the most part. We haven't seen that where these operations are happening everywhere else. But I want to talk about something, that was, all the rage, and it should be, by the way. And I'll start with you, Sarah. The deleted post on President Trump's Truth Social page, which has obviously gone viral. The post depicts former President Obama and his wife, Michelle, as apes. It should get the backlash from both Republicans and Democrats. This should never, ever be part of our political dialogue. And, they need to be smarter. Whether the president knew it or not, he says he didn't. He was not aware of that. Somebody did it. Whatever, this stuff has no place.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head with that one. And it all comes down to accountability. There needs to be a really strict protocol when it comes to social media, especially with someone like Donald Trump in office who, first term, he went wild and crazy with, the 3 a.m. political posts. But in that vein, somebody needs to be held accountable. Whoever the staffer is, this cannot happen regardless of who you are, where you work for. You need to know that you cannot go and do something like this and post it on your principles of all places.
David, it's fair for you to comment on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm waiting for the president to apologize. We won't see that. And that's very unfortunate. And now throwing an unnamed staffer under the bus. This is the first time we've heard that there's staffers that are controlling the president's social media account. So that's news to me. I think it's news to everyone, but it's just accountability. Yeah, I'm looking for accountability. We're not getting a cent of that. So doesn't that concern us? What else are we going to do about this? We're just going to move on and wait for the next racial post to demonize certain groups?
Well, look,
where's the accountability?
I do think there should be accountability. I do think there should be an apology for this. It's beyond the pale and over the top. And the worst part about it's an unforced error. I mean, he had a pretty good week, and he's talking about different things, the economy, Trump RX, and then this is, this takes over, and it really shouldn't. Let's go to Chuck Schumer, his best buddy, I'm sure. He's doing his best, by the way, to go off on the SAVE Act and voter ID, and he goes over the top. Let's listen to him.
Now is for the SAVE Act itself. It has nothing to do with protecting our elections and everything to do with federalizing voter suppression. The SAVE Act is nothing more than Jim Crow 2.0.
Okay, please. But anyway, we're far from the only country, by the way, with voter ID. I mean, there's a long list. There it is, that you need to show ID to vote, and you need to show ID when you register and citizenship. But there's a recent Pew poll, 83% of Americans supported, including 76% of blacks in this country. David, I'll start with you. Why is there so much pushback on something like voter ID when you and I can't get anywhere without an ID?
Well, first off, that poll that you showed is conflating the SAVE Act with showing ID to vote. So they're not one and the same. So let's be clear about that. There are other restrictions in the SAVE Act that I think many of us have concerns with.
Like?
And particularly top it off with Donald Trump talking about nationalizing elections or even canceling elections. It's not clear.
All right, but those are two separate. Those are two separate things.
Yeah,
you mentioned that you're opposed to some things in the SAVE Act, like what?
Right, and here in New York, we have to show our ID when we register to vote. But making these added hoops and all of these different concerns, it's not about restricting people from voting. We should get more people to vote.
But people are. There's no decline in voting.
No. We've seen case after case where the right tries to talk about these improprieties. We haven't seen them. There's been investigations, even by the Heritage Foundation. Their own report has shown that it just doesn't exist. So
okay, but aren't you making the point that there's no hurdles to voting in this country?
No, there are hurdles to voting. I just said in New York State, we have to show our identification to register to vote. And then we go and vote. But why should we have to have another hurdle showing up on a Tuesday or a special election or you name it? Okay. Here in New York State, we have multiple elections. We got village, we got local, we've got and I think that we should have a more easier way to vote. The president's also talking about stripping out vote by mail, which I think is a problem. I think we should have more accessibility, not making it harder to vote.
Sarah?
So what you're saying, David, congrats on winning that election, but are you saying that you wish people had the accessibility to be able to vote more easily for you? In that same way, if we see what happened in California with Gavin Newsom issuing blank driver's licenses for commercial vehicles for illegal aliens, are we going to see the same thing across the board? The SAVE Act is specifically about systemic election reform. Voter ID should be mandatory. I mean, how many voter rolls are completely dirtied up across the country?
But election reform for what?
Rolls. I'm not done. Please let me finish.
Election reform for what?
This is something that I've
Please.
studied for years. And
yes. And what?
Okay, let's talk about IDs. Americans were forced to carry COVID vaccine cards for 3 years. They couldn't get into any establishment, but there's an issue with Americans having to present a legal ID to vote and a real ID, mind you. That is what is important. This is holding our democracy together.
Right. And that's something that most Americans don't have a real ID yet. They have proof of
identification. Then they're not getting on a plane.
But this is going further. This is proof of citizenship.
They're not getting on a plane.
A lot of people don't have.
They're not getting on a plane. They're not getting into government buildings if they don't have their real ID. So, I mean, there are minimum standards, and you can't even get in this building that we're in without showing an ID. So,
it's a solution in search of a problem.
It's not. It's a minimum standard that most people agree with.
Where can you show that this has been a problem?
Then why do we have ID for everything? This is one that we don't. Why is it the only one that we don't have? I guess that's the question.
Again, where's the problem?
But, David, again, why is voting the most important thing we do in this country, or one of? Why don't we have to show an ID?
For people to do it.
But I think what strikes me is most of the arguments, like the Chuck Schumer is saying, this is Jim Crow 2.0. By the way, Jim Crow 2.0 with Democratic laws in the South. But anyway, to sit there and to denigrate people, that people can't get IDs. They're too stupid to get IDs. They don't have access to get IDs. That's the argument it's been for quite a while. Everyone has an ID or must have an ID in this country, and including voting. David, Sarah, good to see you guys. Enjoy the Super Bowl tomorrow, by the way.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Thanks.
Coming up.